of assumptions, but I, upon second thought of the success of a plan seemed rather dubious. I resolved to argue the matter over with him again. "Bartleby," said I, entering the office with a quality service expression, "I am seriously displeased. I am pained, Bartleby. I had thought better of you. I had imagined you of such a gentlemanly organization that in any delicate dilemma a slight hint was sufficient. In short, an assumption. But it appears I am deceived. Why," I added, unaffectedly staring, "you have not even touched the money yet," pointing to it, just where I had left in the evening previous. He answered nothing. "Will you, or will you not? Quit me," I now demanded in a sudden passion, advancing close to him. "I would prefer not to quit you," he replied, gently emphasizing the "not." "What earthly right have you to stay here? Do you pay any rent? Do you pay any taxes? Or is the property yours?" He answered nothing. "Are you ready to go on and write now? Are your eyes recovered? Could you copy a small paper for me in this morning, or help me examine a few lines, or step round to the post office? In a word, will you do anything at all to give a coloring to your self-refusal of departed premises?" He suddenly retired into his hermitage. I was now in such a state of nervous resentment that I thought it but prudent to check myself at present from further demonstrations. Bartleby and I were alone. I remember the target of the unfortunate Adams and the still more unfortunate Court in the solitary office of the latter, and how poor Colt, being dreadfully incensed by Adams, and improperly permitting himself to get widely excited, was unaware hurried him his fatal act, an act which certainly no man could possibly deploy more than actor himself. Often it had occurred to me that in a pondering upon the subject that had to taken place in the public street or at the private residence, it would not have terminated as it did. The circumstance of being alone in a solitary office, upstairs of a building and generally unhallowed by humanizing domestic associations, an uncarpeted office, doubtless of a dusty, hugged sort of appearance that this must have been, which greatly helped to enhance the irritable depression of the helpless Court. But when his odd atom of resentment rose in me, and tempted me consent Bartleby, I grounded him and threw him. How? Why? Simply by recalling the divine injunction, a new commandment gave I unto you, that you love one another. Yes, this is what saved me. Aside from higher considerations, charity often operates as a vested, wise, and product principles, as great safeguard to its possessors. Men have committed murder of jealousy sake, and anger's sake, and heart's sake, and the selfness sake, and spiritual pride's sake, but no man would never, I have heard it, ever committed a murder for sweet charity's sake. Mere self-interest, then, if no better motive can enlist it, should, especially with high-tempered men, promote all beings to charity and philosophies at any rate. Upon the occasion in question, I strove to draw my expressed feelings toward the scriveners by voluntarily constructing his conduct. Poor fellow, He doesn't mean anything, and besides, he has seen hard times and ought to be indulged. I intervened immediately to a coffee myself, and I tried to fancy that in the course of the morning, at such time as might probably across him, Bartleby of his own free across would emerge from his hermitage and take up some decided line of march in the direction of the door, but no 12:30 clock came. Dirk began to glow his face, overturned his steak, and became gently observant. Neighbors obtained down into crowded customs. Ginger nut merchant his noon appealed, and Bartleby remained standing at his window in one of the profound that were reversed for it be credited. Oh, I too acknowledge it. That afternoon I left the office without saying one further word to him. Some days now passed, during which the leisurely interval I looked a little into Edwards on the wheel, and precisely of necessity under the circumstances. Those books induced a solitary feeling. Gradually I sank into the persuasion that these troubles of mine touching the Scrivener had been all presented from entirety, and Bartleby was built upon me for some mysterious purpose of an all-wise providence, which it was not for a mere mortal like me to fathom. Yes, Bartleby, stay there behind your screen, though I shall persecute you no more. You are harmless and noiseless as any of these old chairs. In short, I never feel so private as when I know you are here. At last, I see it, I feel it, I penetrate it to the presidential purpose of my life. I am content. Others may have loftier parts of intact, but my mission in the world, Bartleby, is to furnish you with the office room for such period as you may see to fit remain. I believe that this wise and blessed friend of mine would have continued with me, had it not been for the unsolicited and uncharitable remarks upon me by the professional friends who visit the rooms. But thus it often is that the constant fiction of liberal mind will out the less the best resolve of the more generous. So, to be sure, when I reflected upon it, it was not strange that people in entering my office should be struck by the particular aspect of the non-accountable Bartleby, and so be tempted to throw out some singular observations concerning him. Sometimes, but without heeding his idle talk, Bartleby would remain standing immovable in the middle of the room. So after contemplating him in that position for a while, and utterly would depart, no wiser than he came. Also, when the reference was going on, and the room full of lawyers and witnesses and business was driving fast, some deeply covered, occupied legal gentleman present, seeing Bartleby wholly unemployed, would request him to run round to his office and fettle some papers for him. Thereupon Bartleby would decline, and yet remain idle as before. Then the lawyer would give a great stare and turn to me, and what could I say at last? I was made aware that all through the circle of my professional acquaintance a whisper of wonder was running round, having reference to the strange creature I kept at my office. This worried me very much, and as the idea came upon me of his possible turning out a long-lived man, and keep occupying my chambers, and denying my authority, and scandalizing my professional reputation, and casting a general gloom over the permissions keeping soul and body together to the last upon his savage, and in the end perhaps outlive me, and claim possession of my office by right of his occupancy. As all these dark anticipations crowded upon me more and more, and my friends continually intruded their relentless remark upon the apparition in my room, a great change was wrought in me. I resolved to either all my futilities together, and forever rid me of these intolerable inducibles. Revolving any completed project, however, adapted to this end, I first simply suggest to Bartleby the propriety of his permanent departure. In a calm and serious tone, I commended the idea to his careful and mature consideration, but having taken 3 days of meditate upon it, he apprised me that his original determination remained the same. In short, that he still preferred to abide with me. What shall I do? I now said to myself, buttoning up my coat and the last button, what shall I do? What ought I to do? What does conscience say I should do with this man? You will not thrust him, the poor, pale, passive mortal. You will not thrust such a helpless creature out of your door. You will not dishonor yourself by such cruelty. No, I will not. I cannot do that. Rather would I let him live and die here, and then mention some up reason remain in the world. When will you do for of your costing? He will not budget. Bryce, he lives under your own paper right on your table. In short, it is quite plain that he prefers to cling to you. Then something severe, something unusual must be done. What? Surely you will not have him collect with a constable, and commit his innocent parent to the common jail? And upon what ground could you procure such a thing to be done? A vagrant is he? What? He is a vagrant, a wanderer, who refused to be budged. It is because he will not be a vagrant that you seek to count him as a vagrant. That is too absurd. No visible means of support. There, I have him. Run again, for in duty he does support himself, and that is the only unanswerable proof that any man can show of his possessing the meaning so to do. No more than, since he will not quit me, I must quit him. I will change my offices. I will move elsewhere and give him fair notice, and if I find him on my new premises, I will then proceed against him as a common trespasser. Acting accordingly, next day I thus addressed him. I found these chambers too far from the city hall. The air is unwholesome. In a word, I propose to remove my office next week, and shall no longer require your services. I tell you this now, in order that you may seek another place. He made no reply, and nothing more was said. On the appointed day, I engaged carts and men, proceeded to my chambers, and having built but little furniture, everything was removed in a few hours. Throughout the scrivener remained standing behind the screen, which I directed to be removed. The last thing, it was withdrawn, and being folded up like a huge folio, left him the motionless occupant of the naked room. I stood in the entry watching him a moment, while something from within upbraided me. I re-entered with my hand in my pocket and my heart in my mouth. Goodbye, Bartleby. Goodbye. And God, some way bless you, and take that, slipping something in his head. And he dropped it upon the floor, and then, strange to say, I tore myself from him whom I had so longed to be rid of, established in my new quarters. For a day or two I kept the door locked, and started every footfall in the passages. When I returned to my rooms after a little absence, I would pause at the threshold, for instance, and attentive listen, ere applying my key. But this fear was needless. Bartleby never came nigh me. I thought was all going well when I, looking there, visited me, inquiring whether I was the person who had recently occupied a room at number Wall Street. For full bondings, I replied that I was. Then, sir, said a stranger, who proved a lawyer, you are responsible for the man you left there. He refused to do anything, any copying. He refuses to do anything. He said he preferred not to. And he refused to quit the premises. I'm very sorry, sir, said I, with assumed tranquillity, but in inward terror. But really, the man you allude to is nothing to me, and he is no relation to appearance of mine, that you should hold me responsible for him. In mercy's name, who's he? I certainly cannot inform you. I know nothing about him. Formerly, I employed him as a copyist, but he has done nothing for me now for some time past. I shall settle him then. Good morning, sir. Several days passed, and I heard nothing more, and I thought, and though I often felt a charitable prompting to call at the place and see poorly Bartleby, yet a certain sickliness of I know now what withstood me. All is over with me by this time, though I at last went through another week. No further intelligence reached me, but coming to my room the day after, I found several persons waiting at my door in a high state of nervous excitement. That is the man, here he comes, cried the foremost one, whom I recognized as the lawyer who had previously called upon me alone. You must take him away, sir, at once, cried a portly person among him, advancing upon me, and whom I knew to be the landlord of number Wall Street. This gentleman, my tenant, cannot stand it any longer. Mr. B pointed to the lawyer. He turned him out of his room, and he now proceeds in haunting the building generally, sitting upon the banisters of the stair by day, and sleeping in the entry of the night. Everybody is concerned. Clients are leaving the office. Some fear of in the trend of a mob. Something you must do, and that without delay. Against and the torrent, I fell back before it, and would fain have locked myself in my new quarters. In vain I perceived that Bartleby was nothing to me, no more than to anyone else. In vain I was the last person known to have anything to do with him, and they held me to the terrible account, fearful than being exposed in the papers. As one person proceeded obscurely threatened, I considered the matter, and at length said that if the lawyer would give me a confidential interview with the scrivener, in this the lawyer's own room, I would that afternoon strive my best to rid of them of nonsense they complained of. Going upstairs to my old haunt, there was Bartleby silently sitting upon the banister of the landing. What are you doing here, Bartleby? Said I. Sitting upon the banister, he meekly replied. I motioned him into the old lawyer's room, who then left us. Bartleby, said I, are you aware that you are the cause of a great retribution to me? By persisting in occupying the entry after being dismissed from the office, he answered. Now, one of two things must take place. Either you must do something, or something must be done to you. Now, what sort of business would you like to engage in? Would you like to re-engage in copying for someone? No, I would prefer not to take any change. Would you like a clerkship in a dry goods store? There's too much confinement about that. No, I would not like a clerkship. But I am not particular. Too much confinement, I cried. Why you keep yourself confined all the time? I would prefer not to take a clerkship, he rejoined, as if to settle little item at once. How would the bartender's business suit you? There's no trying of eyesight in that. I would not like it at all, though, as I said before, I am not particular. He unwonted wordless inspirited me. I returned to the charge. Well then, would you like to travel through the country collecting bills for merchants? That would improve your health. No, I would prefer to be doing something else. How then would going as a companion to Europe, to entertain some young gentleman with your conversation? How would that suit you? Not at all. It does not strike me that there is anything definite about that. I like to be satisfactory, but I'm not particular. Stationary, you shall be then, I cried, now losing all patience, and for the first time in all my expression connecting with my family flying into a passion. If you do not go away from these premises before night, I shall feel bound. Indeed, I am bound to quiet the premises myself. I rather pursue comfort, knowing not with what possible threat to try to frighten his impossibility into compliance. Despairing of all further efforts, I was precipitately leaving him, when a final thought occurred to me, one which he had not been wholly indulged before. Bartleby said, in the kindest tone I would assume under such excitement circumstances, will you go home with me now? Not to my office, but my dwelling, and remain there till we will conclude upon some convenience arrangement for you at your leisure. Come, let us start now, right away. No, at present I would prefer not to take any change at all. I answered nothing, but efficiently doubting every one but the suddenness and rapidity of my flight, rushed from the building, ran up Wall Street toward Broadway, and jumping into the first place was soon removed from pursuit. As soon as I returned, I distinctly perceived that I had now done all that possible could, both in respect to the demands of the landlord of his tenants, and with regard to my own desire and sense of duty, to benefit Bartleby, and shield him from rude persecution. I now stole the entirely carefree of quiescence, and my conscience justified me in the attempt, though indeed it was no success as I could have wished. So fearful was I of being again haunted out by the incensed landlord of his exasperated that, surrounding my business to nippers, for a few days I drove about the upper part of the town and through the suburban in a rockway, crossed over Jersey City and hung hopping, and paid furtive visits to Manhattanville and Astoria. In fact, I almost lived in my rockaway for the time. When I again entered my office, a note from the landlord lay upon the desk. I opened it with trembling hands. It confronted me that the writer had sent to the police, and had Bartleby removed to the Thames as a vagrant. Moreover, since I knew more about him than anyone else, he wished me to appear at that place and make a suitable statement of the facts. This tidings had conflicting effects upon me. At first I was indignant, but at last almost approved. The landlord's energetic summary disposition had led him to adopt a procedure which I do not think I would have decided upon myself, and yet as a least resort under such circumstances, it seemed that only plan. As I afterwards learned, the poor scriveners, when told that he must be conducted to the Thames, offered not to slightest obstacle, but in the pale, unmoving way sadly accosted. Some of the compassionate and curious bystanders joined the party, and headed by one of the constables arm in arm with Bartleby, the silent procession felt its way through all the noise and heat and joy of the rolling through at noon. The same day I received the note. I went to the Thames, or to speak more properly, the Hall of Justice. Seeking for the right officer, I studied the purpose of my call, and was informed that the individual I described was indeed within. I then assured the functionary of Bartleby was a perfect honest man, and greatly to be compassionated. However unaccountably eccentric, I narrated all I knew, and closed by suggesting the idea of letting him remain in as indulgent confidence as possible till something less harsh might be done, though indeed I hardly knew that. At all events, if nothing else could be decided upon, the almshouse must receive him. I then begged to have an interview. Being under no disgraceful charge, and quite sincere and harmless in all his ways, they had permitted him freely to wander about the prison, and especially in the enclosed grass-plotted yard. Therefore, and so I found him therefore standing all alone in the quietest of the yard, his face toward the high wall, while all around from the narrow slits of the jail windows I thought I saw peering out upon him the eyes of murderers and thieves. "Bartleby, I know you," he said, without looking around, "and I want nothing to say to you. I was not I that brought you here, Bartleby," said I, nearly pained at his implied submission, "and to you. This should not be so wild at a place. Nothing repugnant attached you by being here. And see, it's not so sad a place. One might think, look, there's sky and here's the grass." "I know where I am," he replied, but would say nothing more, and so I left him, and I entered to Corydon again, a broad mute-like man, in an apron, across, and jerking his thumb over his shoulder, said, "Is that your friend?" "Yes." "Does he want to starve?" "If he does, let him live on the prison fare. That's all." "Who are you?" asked I, not knowing what to make of such an unofficially speaking person in such a place. "I am a grubman. Such gentlemen as a friend here hire me to provide them something good to eat." "Is this so?" said I, turning to the turkey. He said it was. "Well then," said I, slipping some silvers into the grubman's hand, "I want you to give particular attention to my friend there. Let him have the best dinner you can get, and and you must be as polite to him as possible. Introduce me, will you? Said the grubman, looking at me with an impression which seemed to say that he was all impatience for an opportunity to give a specimen of this breeding, thinking it would prove the benefit of the Scrivener. I acquiesced, and asking the grubman his name, went up with him to Bartleby. Bartleby, this is Mr. Cutlass. You will find him very useful to him. Your servant, sir, your servant, said the grubman, making a low salutation behind his apron. Hope you find it pleasant here, sir. Cool apartment, sir. Hope you'll stay with us sometime. Try to make it agreeable. May Miss Cutlass and I have the pleasure of your company to dinner, sir. In Mr. Cutler's private room? I prefer not to dine today, said Bartleby, turning away. It would disagree with me. I am unused to dinners. So saying, he slowly moved to the other side of the enclosure and took up a position fronting the dead wall. How's this? Said the grubman, addressing me with a stare of astonishment. He's odd, ain't he? I think he's a little deranged, said I sadly. Deranged? Deranged is it? Well now, upon my word, I thought that friend of yours was a gentleman follower. They are always pale and gentle-like, them followers. I can't pity him. Can't help him, sir. Did you know more at worst? He added touchingly, and paused, then, laying his hand pitifully on my shoulder, sighed. He died of consumption of sin. So you were acquainted with Mornor? No, I was never socially acquainted with any Folgers, but I cannot stop longer. Look to my friend yonder. You will not lose by it. I will see you again. Some few days after this, I again obtained admission of the Tombs, and went through the corridor in the quiet Bartleby. But without finding him, I saw him coming from his cell not long ago, said a turkey. Maybe he's gone to lottery in the yard, so I went to the direction. Are you looking for the silent man? Said another turkey passing me. Yonder he lies sleeping in the yard there. 'Tis not 20 minutes since I saw him lie down. The yard was entirely quiet. It was not accessible to common prisoners. The surroundings were of amazing thickness, kept off all sounds behind them. The instant captor of the masonry white upon me with its gloom, but a soft imprisoned turf grew underfoot. The heart of the internal pyramid, it seemed, wherein, by some strange magic, through the cliffs grass seed, dropped by birds, and sprang, strangely hungered after a bath of the world. His knee drawn up and lying on his side, his head touching a cold stone, I saw a wasted Bartleby. But nothing stirred. I paused, then went close up to him, stooped over, and saw that his dim eyes were open. Otherwise, he seemed profoundly sleeping. Something prompted me to touch him. I felt his hand, when a tingling shiver ran up the arm and down my spine to my feet. The round face of Godwin peered upon the now. His dinner is ready. Won't he dine today either? Or does he live without dinner? Live without dinner, said, and closed his eyes. He's asleep, and him? With king of consoler, murmured I. There would seem little need for proceeding further in the history. Imagination will readily supply the meagre re-acting of poor Bartleby's interment. But, parting with the reader, let me say that if this little narrative has sufficiently interested him to awaken curiosity as to who Bartleby was and what manner of life he had led prior to the present narrator's making his acquaintance. I can only reply that in such curiosity I fully share, but am wholly to gratify it. Yet here I hardly know whether I should divulge one little item of rumor which came to my ear a few months after the Scrivener's decease. Upon what basis it rested, I would never ascertain, and hence how true it is I can now tell. But inasmuch as this vulture report has not been without certain suggestive interest to me, however sad, it may prove the same with some others, and so I will briefly mention it. The report was this, that Bartleby had been a subordinate clerk in a dead letter office at Washington, from which he had been suddenly removed by a change in the administration. When I think over this rumor, I cannot adequately express the emotions which seize me. Dead letters! Does it not sound like that man? Conceive a man by nature and misfortune prone to appalled hopelessness. Can any business seem more fitted to heighten it than of the continually handling these dead letters, and assaulting them for the formers? For by the cart-load they are unusually burnt. Sometimes from out of folded paper the pale clerk takes a ring, the finger it was meant for, perhaps moulders in the grave, a bank-note sent of sweetest charity, he whom it would relieve, nor eats nor hungers any more, pardon for those who died despairing, hope for those who died unhoping, good tidings for those who died stiffed by relieved calumnies. On events of life, this letter speeds to death. Oh, Bartleby! Oh, humanity!